Imagine standing in front of 80,000 screaming fans at WrestleMania. You're a global superstar, your face is on every lunchbox, and your bank account is booming. Now imagine standing in a steel cage in Las Vegas. You are the baddest humans on the planet, a trained assassin, and you just knocked out your opponent in the first round. Most people assume that these two athletes are in the same tax bracket. They see a flashy cars and the private jets on Instagram and think, combat sports is where the money is. But behind the curtain, there's a financial war happening. A war where WWE jobber, someone who's actually paid to lose, is actually making more than the top 15 ranked UFC contender. Today, we are breaking down the 2026 economy of TKO Group. We're comparing the guaranteed millions of WWE to the show and win gamble of the UFC. From the hidden costs to the rental costs to the secret locker room bonuses that nobody talks about. There's the truth of how much these fighters actually make. To understand the money, you have to look at the boss. In 2026, both WWE and UFC sit under the same umbrella, TKO Group Holdings. Combined, they are a juggernaut with over $20 billion. The merger, orchestrated by Endeavor, was supposed to create a synergy between sports and entertainment, but the payrolls tell vastly different stories. For the fiscal year ending December 2025, TKO reported a massive $4.7 billion in revenue. If you look at the breakdown, WWE actually pulled ahead of its sister company, bringing in $1.7 billion compared to UFC's $1.5 billion. Why does this matter? Because for the first time in history, the fake fighters are generating way more than the real fighters. WWE's move to Netflix in a $5 billion deal has transformed it from a wrestling promotion into a global media titan. UFC's $7.7 billion deal with Paramount Skydance has solidified its place in the king of combat sports. Both companies are richer than ever, yet if you walk into the locker room at the UFC fight night, you'll hear fighters begging for a $50,000 bonus just to pay for their taxes. You walk into the WWE locker room, even the guys at the bottom of the card are likely driving luxury SUVs. If you sign a WWE main roster contract in 2026, you have achieved something rare: financial security. The downside guarantee is the backbone of the wrestling industry. It is a contractual flaw. As of early 2026, the minimum salary for any wrestler on Raw or SmackDown has surged to $300,000 per year. This means that if you get injured in your first week and spend the next 12 months sitting on the couch in a leg cast, WWE is contractually obligated to pay you that full amount. But $350,000 is just the starting point. The roster is tiered. Mid-carders are the workhorses, guys like The Miz, Chad Gable, or Kevin Owens. In 2026, these athletes are clearing between $1 million to $3 million annually. The main eventers, here, the numbers enter a stratosphere. Roman Reigns, the tribal chief, leads the pack by $50 million a year. Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton follow closely, both sitting in a $10 million club. And that's just the base. WWE is a merchandising machine. Every time a fan buys a Yeet shirt or a replica belt, the wrestler gets a cut. For stars like Jey Uso and CM Punk, these royalty checks can add an extra $2 million or $5 million a year on top of their salary. In WWE, you aren't just an athlete, you're a licensed character, and the royalties never sleep. Now let's look at the UFC. There is no downside guarantee here. If you don't fight, you don't get paid. The UFC operates on a high-stress 12x12 or 20x20 structure for its newcomers. The reality of the grind. A fighter graduating from Dana White's Contender Series must sign a contract for $12,000 to show up and $12,000 to win. The math is misery. Let's say you spend 8 weeks in a training camp. You pay for the head coach 10%, your striking coach 5%, and your nutritionist $2,000. You pay for your own supplements and medicals. If you lose the fight, you walk away with $12,000 gross after taxes and fees. You might actually lose the money in a fight by $80,000 contracts. If they fight twice a year and go one-on-one, they make $240,000. They're wrestlers. This sounds like a lot until you realize WWE wrestlers ranked in the same level is making triple their guarantee. The UFC average annual pay sits around $72,000, while the WWE average is closer to $500,000. So this segment is what usually shocks the fans. Who pays for the hotel? In the UFC, the promotion covers fight week expenses. They pay for your flights and your hotel for the few days leading up to the octagon. It's a short, controlled burst of expenses. In WWE, you're an independent contractor. WWE pays for your flight, but once you touch down to the city, you are on your own. The rental car. Wrestlers drive 200 plus miles between towns 4 nights a week. In 2026, with gas and premium rentals, that's $30,000 a year. Being on the road 300 days a year means 300 nights in the Marriotts or Hiltons. Even with corporate discount, there's another $40,000 to $50,000. The nutrition. You can't eat McDonald's and look like a Greek god. Wrestlers spend thousands on meal prep services that deliver to their hotels. WWE wrestler making $350,000 is actually taking home closer to $220,000 after they pay for the privilege of traveling. However, even with these costs, the light is ahead of the UFC's bottom line. One of the most fascinating aspects in 2026 is that both organizers are owned by the same company, yet the labor practices remain widely different. In 2025, TKO Group successfully navigated a massive $335 million settlement in the UFC antitrust lawsuits. This was supposed to lead to better pay, but critics argue it simply cemented its status quo. UFC fighters are still technically independent contractors who lack the leverage of a union. WWE wrestlers, while also independent contractors, have a history of guaranteed payouts that more closely resemble a salary. The moves of streaming has changed everything. In 2026, the UFC no longer relies on buying a $79 pay-per-view. Paramount pays them a flat fee regardless of how much people watch a specific fight. That actually hurts the top-tier fighters' leverage. The company makes the same money whether a star fights or not. Why pay the star $10 million? WWE, on the other hand, sees every next viewer as a potential merchandise buyer. The more you watch, the more shares Cody Rhodes sells, and the more money he makes. The match-driven economy of WWE rewards popularity in the way that the flat fee of the UFC doesn't. We also have to talk about the per-hour rate. A UFC fighter might train 4 months to fight for 15 minutes. If they're on a 12-by-12 contract, then they lose. They earn roughly $1,500 per week for their camp. When a wrestler is in the ring 4 times a week, 52 weeks a year. While the physical toll of the wrestling is different, it's staged but high impact. The frequency of the work is much higher. However, the risk in the UFC is absolute. One knockout can end your career. In WWE, you can work around an injury, change your style, and even move to commentary or a coaching role. In 2026, the UFC has started offering in-octagon health insurance, but only for the night of the fight. If the fighter develops CTE or chronic joint issues 10 years later, the UFC is legally shielded. WWE, following years of pressure and lawsuits, now provides extensive long-term monitoring and even pays for any former talent, regardless of how long they've been gone. To enter top-tier drug and alcohol rehabilitation, the soft benefits without hundreds of thousands of dollars over a lifetime, a perk UFC fighters can only dream of. Let's do a deep dive into the shares. In 2025, Jay also became one of the most top merchandise movers in WWE history. Every time someone in the crowd waves a yeesh sign, Jay is making money. He could receive 3% to 5% gross merchandise sales in live events and online. For top star, resulting checks of $100,000 per month. The WWE champion like Roman Reigns likely makes $42,000 in merchandise royalties before he even walked out the ring. The character aspect of wrestling is where the wealth is built. You don't own your name in the UFC. The UFC owns the platform. In WWE, you are the product. So what happens when you retire? If you're a mid-card WWE wrestler in 2000s, you are likely still receiving royalty checks in 2026. Every time a match is played on the Netflix archive, or your character is included in the WWE 2K26 video game, you get paid. These royalty checks can provide a comfortable living for decades. In contrast, the UFC has no video game royalties. So, its rosters, if you're a retired UFC fighter, you are likely working 9 to 5 for coaching. The archive value of this pro wrestler is significantly higher than that of the MMA fighter. People rewatch WrestleMania 17 every year. Very few people rewatch a random UFC fight night from 2004. Also, the way these companies grow their future stars is a perfect reflection of their pay philosophy. In NXT, WWE's development brand, the 20-year-old college athlete starts at $60,000 to $100,000 a year. They live in Orlando, training a $30 million performance center, and they have access to free doctors, trainers, and life coaches. They are treated like a long-term investment. The UFC doesn't have a developmental school. They have the Contender Series and the regional scene. You fight for $2,000 in a gymnasium in Ohio, hoping Dana White is watching. There's no salary, there's no performance center. You pay for your own coaching, and you are good enough to make them money. So who's richer? If you're the best in the world and the UFC offers a higher one-night peak, you can become a global icon and make $50 million in 50 minutes by fighting a celebrity or negotiating massive pay-per-view points. But for 90% of the roster, WWE is a better pay. A mid-card WWE wrestler lives a life of financial stability, health insurance, and a guaranteed check every 2 weeks. A mid-card UFC fighter lives one spinning back kick away from being broke. As the TKO group continues to grow, the question isn't who is tougher, who's smarter with their contracts. Whether you prefer the scripted drama of the square circle